ask your presence again here, that you might speak and let us hear. That you might move and let us feel. That we might know your word this day for us. We pray in your Son's name. Amen. I have a strong memory, though with less details than I would like, of walking at night at the church camp ran by Illinois South Conference. It is called Du Bois, and thinking, this is holy ground. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. The interesting thing about this memory is it's not one that comes from nostalgia. Unlike many pastors, and there are many pastors, and unlike many of you, I wasn't formed in church camp as a youth. I never went to church camp when I was a kid. I went to some music camps and some theater camps near the end of my time in school, but even then, not until middle school. I just wasn't a camper. It didn't have any appeal to me whatsoever. Also, unlike many of my stories, I don't know the details of this memory. I assume it was on a night I was chaperoning a youth trip to one of the many retreats that was at Du Bois while I was pastor at this church in Nescuda. But I don't know which one it was. But I remember being in those woods. I remember sensing the presence of God in the still of the evening, in the light of the stars and the moon shining down through the treetops, reflecting on the lake. The quiet of the trees. I remember feeling a sense of peace and calm, even in the midst of a busy youth retreat, and knowing that I was standing on holy ground. To say that our text from Exodus this day is about holy ground is to, well, overstate the case. This text is about many things. What it means to be called, as Moses is called. It's about the name of God and what that name reveals about the nature of God. It's about a God who works for the oppressed and the downtrodden, who comes to the aid and rescue of slaves in Egypt. But it's also about what it means to be holy ground. Take off your sandals, God says to Moses, the place where you are standing as holy ground. Well, my shoes are off. Feel free to join me. Because this place too is holy ground. And you all who are at home, if you didn't hear the children's message, the spoiler is all places can be holy ground. So you too, feel free to take off your shoes for this sermon. You are on holy ground. We are on holy ground. What does that mean? For Moses, the holy ground was the wasteland. That's what Horeb translates into. Horeb in Hebrew is wasteland. Moses was on Mount Horeb, or Mount Wasteland. Now, this could be a coincidence, but the names in the Torah rarely are. Remember, Isaac means laughter. So it feels to me like the writers are making a statement by what the name they give to Horeb. So why name the place where God speaks to Moses as Mount Wasteland? Because there was nothing special about it. Unlike the church camp that began this sermon, or the ones that so many of you have visited, this was not a place designed to help Moses see God. It was the wasteland. It was an ordinary mountain in an ordinary desert. A place where sheep and other animals could safely graze, but nothing special beyond that. Nothing that made it holy or sacred or anything at all. Except that God was there. God appears to Moses there in the burning bush. God appears and says, "Stop, listen, know me better." And that appearance by God is what makes it holy ground. It's what makes it a place where sandals and shoes ought to be removed. Mount Horeb becomes sacred when God appears, because it is the very presence of God that makes it holy. The same is true in our lives, and this is good news, especially in this moment. We are in a time where so many of our usual patterns are still off, where some of us still feel safest worshiping at home, and even as those of us who worship here can't go all the places we usually go. Our patterns are off. The ways we have sought to know and experience God have changed, are different, are not the same. And in these moments, places we might have once called sacred are perhaps no longer accessible to us, at least not easily. And we talk about church camps. This summer, no kids went to Merrill. They met online. They found sacred space in their living rooms and kitchens and backyards, or grandma and grandpa's house. But no kids went to Miriam itself, because things are different right now. And in that reality, it is good to be reminded that it is God that makes a place holy, and not the place itself. And therefore, any place can be holy if God is there. We find holy ground whenever we see and experience the presence of God. It need not be in a place we all know God to be, like a church camp or in a sanctuary or a great Gothic cathedral, because God is present in all the places of our lives. And so each one of those places has potential to become holy ground for us. Each one of those places has potential to be a place where we come and meet God. This requires a certain amount of intention for us to look for God. For after all, we only can see God if we're looking for God. And we experience the holy ground when God is noticed by us. One of the commentators I read this week imagined a Mount Horeb filled with burnt up bushes, because Moses was so preoccupied as he shepherded the sheep that he kept missing God appearing until finally he noticed God and never noticed the bushes burned up behind him. That's not the story of the Bible, by the way, but it seems to me an image that captures a biblical truth nonetheless. And that's this. Sometimes God appears and we're too distracted to notice. And so God tries again, and again, and again, until finally we see God and find a place to be holy. We don't always see the ways that God appears to us. We don't always receive the invitations to recognize holy ground. But the good news is, when we do see, when we do notice, when we do receive, any place can become holy ground. Our churches, our homes, our places of work, walks in the woods, and more. If we are watching closely, we may yet discover that they indeed are holy because God is there. So, am I trying to minimize the idea of sacred space, that we have places we hold where we feel God especially close? Well, no, of course not. What I am saying is it makes those places sacred and special are not that God can only be felt there, what a silly idea, but that for whatever reason they have proven to be spaces that help people, that help us as we seek God. Go to Miriam next summer. Walk on the grounds, visit the chapel, climb the tower. I'm talking to me too. I've not been to that tower yet. Remember those who have come before. Remember the lives that have been changed, the faiths that have been strengthened. It is indeed sacred space, but not because Miriam is so special and amazing, because when people come there, their hearts are ready to receive the God who is always present. By the camps, by the designs, by the prayers, by the memories that people bring. It is sacred space because people are open to the presence of God. Go to the Boy and Illinois South. I've been to that one more than twice. And feel the peace as you walk the trails. Or go to Brook Woods here in town and listen to the Spirit moving in the trees. Walk the labyrinth on our property, or come to the sanctuary here after everyone has left, or in the late evening. I'll let you in if you want. And sit for a moment in the silence in this space. These places are all sacred spaces as well as holy ground. They are sacred because they have been designed either by human hands or divine in a way that helps us as we seek to see and hear God. They are sacred spaces that help us become open to the reality that we're standing on holy ground. And for that, we are and should be grateful. Of course, one more question remains. How does knowing all this affect our lives? Well, for one, I hope it is an encouragement to keep watch. Keep our eyes open to the presence of God and to do the things that make that keeping watch more possible. We can engage in intentional times of prayer for ourselves and for the world. We can be purposeful in reading our Bibles or devotions. We can attend worship regularly, right here. He said to a bunch of folk who are already attending worship right here regularly. Yeah, I know. You can take time to sit and be still. Or walk and be still if, like me, sitting still is not your thing. Meditating, listening to the presence of God. All these and more. Anything that helps us to have eyes that are more open, hearts that are more prepared to receive the Holy among us. And if nothing else, we can go from this place remembering this truth, that God is always with us, and therefore any place can be holy. That God is always there, so any place can become sacred ground. If you are feeling down or isolated in these times, if you feel disconnected from church or forbidding God, then hear this good news. Pause and hear this good news. Take off your sandals now, because the place you are standing is holy ground. For the place where you are is the place where God is too. And that is good news. Thanks be to God. Amen.